Except Mark, who's now in the bathroom. Oh, there we go. Okay, we can start. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa, Parivakacharya, Ashtotar, that Sri Srimad, Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Parivakacharya, Ashtotar, that Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Now, I did open the door and put the little stone in there, but I don't hear the fans. Can you make sure they're on? You know what to do, right? Walk up the stairs. You can walk up the stairs and you see there's a little switch, and if you go to the right, it has to be on the right. Yes, right is on. Right on, exactly. And I think we'll hear it go on. Yeah, there we go. That's it. So, and this is still open, right?
Yes.
Then everything is well. Everything is good. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Turn this one up. He wants us to use this one, you know, the brown one. We'll start it with this. Okay. We're beginning a new chapter on page 615. On this 12th day of October 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Is there a problem? Is that okay for you? We're beginning chapter 16 on page 615, entitled The Divine and Demoniac Natures. Okay, we're just going to chant the first verse together. Shri Bhagavano Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vivastitihi Dhanam Damash Chayagyascha Svadhyayas Tapa Arjavam. Shri Bhagavano Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Page 615. Okay. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayang Sattva Sangshuddhi Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhi Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Kunja Bihari Prabhu. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhi Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Dimitri. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Satchung here. Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. You want to try, Sachin? Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhi Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Okay, good switch. Anyone out there who wants to chant in Zoom land?
Yes, Prabhu, can I chant?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, thank you.
Dhanavari Mataji, go ahead.
Thank you, Prabhu. Sri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Abhayam Sattva Sansruddhi
Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhi
Gnana Yoga Vyavastitihi
Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi
Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha
Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha
Svadhyayaya Stapa Arjavam.
Svadhyayastapa Arjavam.
Thank you.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi
Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi
Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha
Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha
Svadhyayas Tapa Arjavam.
Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Anyone else?
Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Oh, I've got no sound all of a sudden. Can you hear me? I can't hear you at all. Sorry, maybe
I can hear you. I can hear you. You're fine.
I can hear you too.
I can't hear Dravida Prabhu.
That doesn't matter. Just chant it.
Okay, sorry. Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhi
Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhi
Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi
Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi
Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha
Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha
Svadhyayastapa Arjavam.
Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Okay, I'll chant the remainder. Ahangsa satyam akrodhas tyaga kshantidapaishanam daya bhuteshvalolaptvam ardabam lirachapadam tejakshama duti shaucham adroho natimanita pavandi sambadham daivim abhijatasya bharata. Okay, I'm going to give the synonyms for the first verse that we chanted together. Shri Bhagavan Vacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Abhayam, fearlessness. Sattva Sangshuddhi, purification of one's existence. Jnana, in knowledge. Yoga, of linking up. Vyavastitihi, the situation. Dhanam, charity. Damaha, controlling the mind. Cha, and. Yagyaha, performance of sacrifice. Cha, and. Svadhyayaha, study of Vedic literature. Tapaha, austerity. Arjavam, simplicity. All right, translation for the 3 verses. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. And it just so happens there are 26 of them, but it's a different list than the other list that we heard about this morning. Purport. In the beginning of the 15th chapter, the banyan tree of this material world was explained. The extra roots coming out of it were compared to the activities of the living entities, some auspicious, some inauspicious. In the 9th chapter also, the devas or godly and the asuras, the ungodly or demons, were explained. Now, according to Vedic rites, activities in the mode of goodness are considered auspicious for progress on the path of liberation. And such activities are known as Daivi Prakriti, transcendental by nature. Those who are situated in the transcendental nature make progress on the path of liberation. For those who are acting in the modes of passion and ignorance, on the other hand, there is no possibility of liberation. Either they will have to remain in this material world as human beings, or they will descend among the species of animals or even lower life forms. In this 16th chapter, the Lord explains both the transcendental nature and its attendant qualities, and the demoniac nature and its qualities. He also explains the advantages and disadvantages of these qualities. The word abhijatasya, in reference to one born of transcendental qualities or godly tendencies, is very significant. To beget a child in a godly atmosphere is known in the Vedic scriptures as garbhadhana sanskara. If the parents want a child in the godly qualities, they should follow the 10 principles recommended for the social life of the human being. In the Bhagavad Gita, we have studied also before that sex life for begetting a good child is Krishna himself. Sex life is not condemned, provided the process is used in Krishna consciousness. Those who are in Krishna consciousness, at least, should not beget children like cats and dogs, but should beget them so that they may become Krishna conscious after birth. That should be the advantage of children born of a father and mother absorbed in Krishna consciousness. The social institution known as Varnashram Dharma, the institution dividing social society into 4 divisions of spiritual life and 4 occupational divisions or castes, is not meant to divide human society according to birth. Such divisions are in terms of educational qualifications. They are to keep the society in a state of peace and prosperity. The qualities mentioned herein are explained as transcendental qualities meant for making a person progress in spiritual understanding so that he can get liberated from the material world. In the Varnashram institution, the sannyasi, or the person in the renounced order of life, is considered to be the head or the spiritual master of all the social statuses and orders. A brahmana is considered to be the spiritual master of the 3 other sections of society, namely the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. But a sannyasi who is on the top of the institution is considered to be the spiritual master of the Brahmins also. For a sannyasi, the first qualification should be fearlessness. So this was introductory, and now he's starting to explain systematically all of these 26 different qualities. And they're divided according to sannyasis and Vaishyas, Shudras, Kshatriyas, like For a sannyasi, the first qualification should be fearlessness. Because a sannyasi has to be alone without any support or guarantee of support, he has simply to depend on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one thinks, after I leave my connections, who will protect me, he should not accept the renounced order of life. One must be fully convinced that Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his localized aspect as the Paramatma, is always within, that he is seeing everything, and he always knows what one intends to do. One must have firm conviction that Krishna, as the Paramatma, will take care of a soul surrendered to him. I shall never be alone, one should think. Even if I live in the darkest regions of a forest, I shall be accompanied by Krishna, and he will give me all protection. That conviction is called abhayam, fearlessness. This state of mind is necessary for a person in the renounced order of life, and that's the first quality. We'll read maybe one other paragraph and then explore a little bit. Then he has to purify his existence. There are many rules and regulations to be followed in the renounced order of life. Most important of all, a sannyasi is strictly forbidden to have any intimate relationship with a woman. He is even forbidden to talk with a woman in a secluded place. Lord Chaitanya was an ideal sannyasi, and when he was at Puri, his feminine devotees could not even come near to offer their respects. They were advised to bow down from a distant place. This is not a sign of hatred for women as a class, but it is a stricture imposed on the sannyasi not to have close connections with women. One has to follow the rules and regulations of a particular status of life in order to purify his existence. For a sannyasi, intimate relationships with women and possession of wealth for sense gratification are strictly forbidden. The ideal sannyasi was Lord Chaitanya himself, and we can learn from his life that he was very strict in regards to women. Although he is considered to be the most liberal incarnation of Godhead, accepting the most fallen conditioned souls, he strictly followed the rules and regulations of the sannyas order of life in connection with association with women. One of his personal associates, namely Chota Haridas, was associated with Lord Chaitanya along with his other confidential personal associates, but somehow or other this Chota Haridas looked lustily on a young woman, and Lord Chaitanya was so strict that he at once rejected him from the society of his personal associates. Lord Chaitanya said, for a sannyasi or anyone who is aspiring to get out of the clutches of material nature and trying to elevate himself to the spiritual nature and go back home, back to Godhead, for him looking toward material possessions and women for sense gratification, not even enjoying them, but looking toward them, just looking with such a propensity, is so condemned that he had better commit suicide before experiencing such illicit desires. So see, these are the processes for purification. Okay, one more paragraph. The next item is Jnana Yoga Vavastiti, being engaged in the cultivation of knowledge. Sannyasi life is meant for distributing knowledge to the householders and others who have forgotten their real life of spiritual advancement. A sannyasi is supposed to beg from door to door for his livelihood, but this does not mean that he is a beggar. Humility is also one of the qualifications of a transcendentally situated person. And out of sheer humility, the sannyasi goes from door to door, not exactly for the purpose of begging, but to see the householders and awaken them to Krishna consciousness. This is the duty of a sannyasi. If he is actually advanced and so ordered by his spiritual master, he should preach Krishna consciousness with logic and understanding. And if one is not so advanced, he should not accept the renounced order of life. But even if one has accepted the renounced order of life without sufficient knowledge, he should engage himself fully in hearing from a bona fide spiritual master to cultivate knowledge. A sannyasi or one in the renounced order of life must be situated in fearlessness, sattva sangshuddhi, purity, and jnana yoga, knowledge. Om jnana timarandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshurun milatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So Krishna has given a list here of qualities that are the help one to achieve, or symptoms of one who has achieved the divine nature, meaning that we're interested in purification and interested in solving the real problems of life. which is to break the cycle of birth and death and go back home, back to Godhead. And so it's probably would call it a culture. This is the culture of Krishna consciousness. Culture, it means activities and cultivation of knowledge, which move one forward in the process of purification toward complete purity and reawakening our original spiritual nature. So in this chapter, which is pretty amazing, he begins with these 26 qualities of upliftment, purity, divine qualities. And then we're going to hear, I remember when I first read this chapter, it wasn't even Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, but the translations are basically the same. I said, whoa, that sounds like me, when I got into the demoniac part. Because this society that we live in is mostly controlled by the modes of passion and ignorance. And without a transcendental influence, you generally sink down into a very animalistic frame of mind. And so it was bracing to read it, and especially when reading it in Prabhupada's books and the explanation and so forth, when I read this Gita. But here in these first 3 verses, we have a list and Prabhupada's wonderful explanation. This is a very long purport, as you may have noticed. So it will take us a few days. And it's divided according to the different social statuses of life, beginning with the sannyasi. And so he's describing, first of all, his fearlessness. Now, you may recall that in the process of Krishna consciousness, there's this 6 principles of surrender called the Sharanagati. And it describes there, Anukulyena Sankalpa, Pratikulya Savarjanam, Rakshishati Vishwaso, Goprit Vevananang Tata, Atmanikshepa Karpanye, Shadvidha Shadanagati. Shadanagati means the process of surrender, taking shelter, Sharana. So it begins with accepting those things that are favorable for devotional service and rejecting those things unfavorable. Now this is true, as I pointed out before, of any discipline, anything that you want to achieve, some goal. Suppose you want to achieve a degree in college in some subject matter. Well, there's austerity that you've got to accept. I mean, you have to start accepting when you're in high school, right? That, okay, I'm going to study hard because I want to get into a good college. And that means can't just fool around. I've got to hit the books and do all the things that we have to do. And then when you're actually in college, then you have to attend the classes, you have to write the papers, you have to take the tests, and you have to pay your fees, you have to get in there and probably go into debt these days. It's a whole lot of austerity because you want a certain goal. Taking on things favorable and rejecting things unfavorable. So the same thing is true in spiritual life. We take on things favorable. The most favorable thing is to chant Hare Krishna, to chant the holy name. And the wonderful thing about it, there's no prerequisites at all. That can be the very first step. You can be the most degraded person in the world, but if you start chanting, then the process of purification takes place. So then you come into association with devotees, and you find that for the chanting to really progress nicely, you have to avoid the 10 offenses like that. But the chanting is independent. So there's so many other things, chanting and doing this and don't do this, 4 regulative principles, no illicit sex, no meeting, no gambling, no intoxication. The do's and the don'ts. Then the next one is Rakshishati Vishwaso, and that is directly related to the first quality here, fearlessness. The truly surrendered soul is completely convinced that Krishna will protect in any circumstance. Now just imagine what that means. Just contemplate Prabhupada's incredible heroic activity of coming to America, getting on a boat with no money, practically no connections on the other end, 10,000 miles away. It wasn't a cruise liner, it wasn't even an ocean liner, it was a cargo ship. He had 2 heart attacks and he'd never been in a boat, he got seasickness, and yet he persevered. And Krishna protected him. He had 2 heart attacks. The 3rd night he said, if I have another one, I'm finished. Krishna appeared in a dream, and he was rowing the boat. He said, don't worry, I've taken charge of this boat, this ship. You just have confidence. So what happened? So he came out. Now, the route from India to America goes through the Suez Canal. So the first part, when he was in the Indian Ocean and all that, it was difficult. But then when he got into the Atlantic, which at that time, September, that's hurricane season, right? August, September. It was as calm as glass. It was so incredible that the captain's wife asked him, "Can you please come back with us on the return trip? Because we never had such a smooth ride as this one." So that was the first miracle taking it. So Prabhupada, he was exactly in this mood of sannyasa, as he describes here, fearless and confident of Krishna's protection, which go together. And Goptritve, that he'll maintain. In our life, to live in the world, you need two basic things. It's categorized as yoga and kshema. Krishna says in the 8th chapter, I provide those for my pure devotee. What is the yoga? The yoga means the things we need. Food, air, shelter, those basic things that you need to just live in this world. And kshema means security, safety. You can be in a nice house and you can have all these things, but if there's, race riots going on outside, or the whole social system is falling apart, you're not secure. Anything may happen. So the security and things that you need, that's yoga and kshema. So that's Goptritve, being confident that in any circumstance Krishna will provide. When Prabhupada came, he didn't know what he's going to eat. He came with some cereal, rough cereal, and potatoes or something. He said, well, I'll just boil this and, something. He came to New York, and New York is a very eclectic place, New York City. I lived there. He was able to get dal. There were Indian groceries. His first disciples would bring him mangoes and everything. Krishna was providing. He's providing, and he provided throughout all of his 12 years. So that's the sannyasi. And you read about Lord Chaitanya, of course, the ideal, and the 6 Goswamis, who were so amazing. Especially 3 of them gave up enormous wealth and influence. Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami. He didn't have so much influence, but he had enormous wealth. He was the sole heir to a huge fortune, and he just didn't care about it at all. He became the most renounced of all. I mean, even amongst the Goswamis, he was the emblem of renunciation. And they just lived, under a different tree every night, and they, got a little here, a little there, a little chapati, and they hardly slept. From being millionaires to that. And they were blissful. Prabhupada tells a story of someone during the time of Gandhi, the independence movement. He was a very wealthy lawyer, and he gave it all up, for the movement and the renunciation. But he didn't get the higher taste of Krishna consciousness. It was all the war for liberation, and he couldn't stand the transition. And I think he committed suicide or something like that. It was so shocking, But when you have the substantial, the actual nectar of Krishna consciousness flowing, you can take on all kinds of austerities you can face. So this is what a sannyasi has faith in. So, and then the sattva sangshuddhi, purification of one's existence. Now, where have we heard that before? I don't know if you remember. Rishabdev, his very first instruction. Rishabdev is also an ideal sannyasi. When he takes sannyas, he becomes also completely whatever Krishna provides. Even though he's Krishna himself, it's a whole thing. So he said, Nayam deho de habajang naloke krishtan kaman adate vidbhajange. The first thing he says to his sons before he retires, exalted sons, all of them, beginning with Bharat, the 9 Yogendras, the other 90 were all very wonderful, pure. But he's telling them and telling everyone else, telling us also, that having attained the human form of life, one should not waste it on gross sense gratification on the level of the hogs. I put it into a little poem. You've heard it before. Don't waste this precious human life, dear friend, by working hard for hoggish happiness. Through bhakti yoga, worldly life transcend and learn to taste divine love's endless bliss. So this is really the essence. The being willing and faithful enough to give up the immediate sense gratifications that are always available, and to purify oneself so that you can become eligible to taste Brahma Saukya, spiritual happiness that doesn't end and it constantly increases. You notice how that's exactly opposite to sense gratification? It always ends. It never increases. And the result is suffering. Is relative suffering. Even if it's a wholesome kind of mode of goodness kind of enjoyment, still that's going to ensure you another material body, which is sure to give you suffering. So this is our choice. And the sannyasi, he makes a commitment through spiritual strength. I'm going to go for it, you know. And they're meant to be emblems in society, sources of inspiration and knowledge. And all our great acharyas are sannyasis, either externally also, or just internally. Just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Now it's interesting, he had 10 children, you know, and until the last few years, he was a householder. He eventually retired and went into seclusion as Babaji, which is a sannyasi who doesn't travel, basically. But he was known, he was given the name of the seventh Goswami, because even though he was in household life, he was renounced. He wrote this song, Manasa Deho Geho Josi Tumor, that everything I have, my mind, my body, my geha, my home, everything that I have some influence over, I dedicate to you. It's for your service. And it's possible to live like that. I've seen so many wonderful householders. You go into the house, there's deities there, you know, everything it's all offered to the deity, and whatever's on the wall, it's all like these pictures. In other words, you can create your environment. It's like a temple. And the children are, you know, given training from birth, they're exposed to Krishna consciousness. Very auspicious birth. Prabhupada always pointed out that he had that kind of birth. Maharaj Pariksit did, Bhaktisiddhanta, you know, to be born in that kind of family. So household life, many of Lord Chaitanya's followers were householders, great devotees, like Advaita Charya and Srivas Thakur and many others. So, but here he's speaking about especially the sannyasi. So fearlessness, purification of one's existence. What does Rishabdev say? He goes on, he says, instead of Nayam Dehaba Kashtanka Ahate Vidbhujangne Topo Divyam Putraka, my dear sons, you have to embrace austerity, divine penance and austerity. Why? For purification of existence. Exactly what's mentioned here. Sattva Sangshuddhi. It says, Tapo Divyam Putraka Yena Sattvam Shuddhyed. Sattvam here means existence, Shuddhi means purification. What's the point of that? Sattvam Shuddhi, Yasmad Brahma Saukyam Tunantam. By that purification of existence, you become more and more, it's not all of a sudden generally, it's more and more able to taste divine happiness. Just like the chanting of Hare Krishna. We're all endeavoring to chant to some degree, you know. And no one can deny there's a certain pleasure there in the japa and especially in the kirtan. It's not material. You know, we can tell it's not material because you keep chanting the same mantra over and over again. People come in, I heard that song. I remember we were on Harinam one day. You never know who you're going to see on Harinam, you know. We go downtown to the gas lamp. Friday night, we were doing it for many, many years. And then COVID came, and then, so maybe it'll start up again, hopefully. So we're down there. We had this sign. Yamuna made it. A heavy sign. You remember. And we had some fellow come up, some homeless guy. And the chanting just got him agitated. Do you remember? Were you there? He punched it. He punched the sign. Boom. And he made a little hole in there. He ran off, you know. It was just too much for him, you know. And we've had people say, okay, I heard that song already, you know. Because they're not really hearing it. But if you actually get into it, it's ever fresh. That proves it's spiritual. The fact that you can, you know, be satisfied with that. Because really it's, you know, there's so much variety. It's Krishna. If you really pay attention, you get a little purified. Anyway, it's ever new and fresh. So that's the faith of and the activities of the sannyasi. They're fearless, the purification of existence, and they cultivate spiritual knowledge. Many of them are great scholars, just like Rupa and Sanatan and Jiva Goswami, their nephew, great scholars. And they left for us such wonderful literature. This is the basis of all of what we read. We read Prabhupada's and his translations and commentaries, but where do you think the commentaries come from? The commentaries are coming from those acharyas like Rupa and Sanatan, or their students. Like this book, if you may not have noticed, is dedicated to Baladev Vidyabhushan. Baladev Vidyabhushan was a disciple of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who was a disciple of Narottam Das Thakur, who was a disciple of Lokanath Swami, and he was taught by Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami trained up the first generation of preachers. Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamananda Prabhu, and Srinivas Acharya, who wrote the song about the Goswamis. So we come in that line, and this cultivation of knowledge, you can imagine how much time you have. You know, I mean, if you're not going out and working, you know, you're living as simply as possible, and you're hardly sleeping or eating 20 hours a day. And Jiva Goswami wrote an enormous number of literatures, six sandarbhas, which are really deep, you know, philosophical treatises. That's what the sandarbha is, a treatise. And Rupa Goswami also wrote so much. Exquisite poetry in the Sanskrit. I was just going over some, you know, like, I'll just give you one sample. Yeah. And it's like, these are ever fresh. This is a meditation on Mother Yashoda, you know, kissing Krishna. It's a Amba Vinahita Chumba Madadata Bimba Makadamba Jayadeva. Now it's not very long, you know, but you can hear the poetry there. Amba is the mother. Amba Vinahita. She's performing. She's doing his chumba. Chumba means to kiss. What is she kissing? Amala Tara. Amala means extremely pure and pristine. A face, a beautiful lotus face of Krishna, his bimba-fruit lips and his wonderful curly hair. She's kissing all of that, and she's expressing her enormous love for Krishna. We're coming up on Damodar month. It's called Kartik. Every day we sing a song that meditates on this little baby Leela of Krishna in the mood, in a little child, how he's naughty, he steals the yogurt, and he gets bound up, you know, by the Yashoda. So it's a very wonderful time of year, very auspicious month of Kartik. You know who's the presiding goddess of that month? You guessed it, Radharani, Srimati Radharani. And I always wondered, till recently, there's a beautiful article in the latest Back to Godhead magazine. You can have a subscription. I'll show you how you can get one. I've had one for years. I worked on that magazine. And Satyaraj Prabhu, who's really one of our main authors here, wonderful devotee, very learned, he explained what Radha Damodar, because I always wonder about Radha Damodar. Damodar is generally Krishna as a child, being bound up by Mother Yashoda. So where does Radharani come in? Of course, she's always there, but you know, directly. So he says, yes, there are also pastimes where Radharani is also binding Krishna. You know, he comes late for the rendezvous, and she has a golden rope, and she binds him up because she's angry at him. You know, and she binds him with her wonderful glances. So she's also binding Krishna with her love. You know, the ropes of love. Anyway, it's a great time to be Krishna conscious and to you know, take steps forward in becoming Krishna conscious. So this is our sannyasis. They're fearless. They always purify their existence, and they cultivate spiritual knowledge. And with that knowledge, they don't just hold it; they always teach it. This is the reason for sannyasis, so you can become an effective preacher. Srila Prabhupada had a whole pastime with sannyasi. He was a householder. He had 5 children. You know, and he started preaching when he was a householder. He would invite the Gaudiya Math devotees into his home, and when he was in Bombay, he was a patron, and he was always writing. You know, Back to Godhead he started, even as a householder. But then he was encouraged by his spiritual master in several dreams that he had to take sannyas, which means leaving the comfort of home, you know, and in all the relationships. And he said, I was horrified. I heard him say it. I was horrified. He didn't want to do it. You know, didn't think he was ready or it was for him. But then he went to Vrindavan, and one of his godbrothers, Keshava Maharaj, was encouraging him, insisting, no, you want to be an effective preacher, you know, you can go everywhere, you know, you should take sannyas. So I think it was 1959, that he finally took sannyas. And he became the ideal sannyasi, and he made sannyasis who, you know, pioneered the movement. Okay, any discussion on this first 3 qualities?
Hare Krishna.
Who's that?
I have a question.
Okay. Go ahead, Vijay.
Prabhu, if I may, in what measure, why is it that leading an austere life, in what measure leading an austere life walks hand in hand with writing transcendental literature?
Well, yeah. I mean, the austere life is throughout Krishna consciousness. We're all meant to be renounced as possible, but the sannyasis especially, they minimize down to nil, because the more that you can, disentangle yourself from, the general course of material life, the more you'll be able to direct your senses and your mind and your intelligence and your whole being to glorifying Krishna, serving Krishna, and preaching. Writing is for communication, and generally, our greatest acharyas, they're great scholars, and they write books for the purpose of enlightening others, for giving them Krishna consciousness. The mood is there in Prahlad Maharaj. He's perfectly expressed it in his prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. He says, Naibo dvijay padadodacche abaitadanyastwadbhi yagayana mahamritam banglachitta. He says, I am not at all disturbed by the material world. And he proved it. He was in the clutches of his father. They tried to kill him. He was completely undisturbed. He knew that he's pure spirit. Nothing can touch me. And he was protected by Krishna. So, Naibo dvijay, because I am with you and you're across the Vaitarani river. You're already in the spiritual world, and I'm simply, whenever I want, wherever I am, I can chant your glories and immerse myself in an ocean of nectar. So where is there any unhappiness for me? But I am disturbed. I am lamenting. Shoche. Oh, so he's happy and unhappy at the same time? Yes. For himself, he has no problem. But he's so empathetic. This is the character of a real devotee. Pada dukkha dukhi means others' unhappiness causes him unhappiness. He wants everyone to be happy. The last thing in the world he would do would voluntarily and intentionally harm anyone, even a little bug. It's a living entity. It's part and parcel of Krishna. I should give him a little prasadam and chant Hare Krishna. Something, but that certainly wouldn't cause any pain. So, what to speak of human beings who can be brought to Krishna consciousness? So, this is the nature of great devotees. They try as hard as possible to give Krishna consciousness to others. So, to do that, the minimizing our entanglement in sense gratification is essential, and that's what the austerity is all about. Because it's a question of purification. That's why it's called tapasya. It's a burning. It's kind of, you're burning out, the deep-rooted desires in the heart. But it's not all a negative thing. It's not just give up, give up, give up, give up. No, you're accepting. By accepting the discipline of Krishna consciousness, chanting 64 rounds a day, can you imagine? I once tried to calculate what it would take to chant 64 rounds in ISKCON, because you can't stop going to the morning program, So that's 4 hours right there. Well, okay, 2 hours are already chanting. But I figured if you chant 5 minutes a round, which was, I think, Haridas Thakur's standard. Prabhupada was once asked, how long did he chant every day? And Prabhupada said 16 hours. 16 hours at 192 rounds is 5 minutes a round. I figured it out, trust me. So I was saying, okay, if I get, that's 192 rounds. I'll get up to 64. 64 is the standard. This is what Lord Chaitanya said. There's this whole pastime where he had his followers, and he was visiting, said they all wanted to invite him for lunch. This is one of the main pastimes, So he said, but I'm not going to accept an invitation from anyone who's not a lakpati. The word lak, you learn this word soon when you come. It's called lakh now. They pronounce it lakh. You know what a lakh is, 100,000. So lakpati usually means someone who has at least 100,000 rupees. So his disciples were all very, even the householders, they were very, lavish. So they were all lamenting, oh, I'm not a lakpati. So Lord Chaitanya laughed and he said, no, I don't mean that you have 100,000 rupees. I mean that you chant 100,000 names a day. That's 64 rounds, roughly. Okay. So at 5 minutes a round, it comes out to 5 hours and 20 minutes, which is kind of doable if you get up maybe at 12:30. Get to bed at maybe 7:30. It's not so easy. We're already past that. So, but try chanting 5 minutes around. I mean, I've timed it. It's not Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram 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 Hare Krishna. and you have to hear the name too. It's I don't know how they chant, 100,000 names, 64,000. So anyway, that was standard for these Goswamis, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who was, out of this world in terms of the austerities he would accept. He was incredible. He chanted 300,000 names a day for, 11 years? He took a vow to chant 1 billion names. 1 billion names. You multiply it out, what that takes, Anyway, he did that. He did complete his vow, and then he started the movement, Gaudiya Math, after that. So all of this kind of austerity enables you to enter into the highest realms of Krishna consciousness and to experience them all the time and not be tempted to, at all. You're completely detached. So that's the value of it. It's kind of the really fast track, and generally it's not possible for us too much. We're too much, condemned and habituated to other, low consciousness. But still, we can make some advancement, and we have from the beginning you understand. Okay, it's a gradual process. I may not succeed in this one lifetime, but there's no loss or diminution. Whatever we should try to go back to God in this lifetime. But if we don't, then we made some progress and we're on our way. Nothing is lost. Whereas on materially, everything is lost. Every last thing is lost that you work so hard for. All these multi-billionaires and millionaires, and everyone's aspiring for that, buying the lottery. It's the mentality that counts. It's just hopeless. It's just such a tragic waste of human life. So Prahlad says, I'm lamenting. Shochetato vimukha chetasa indriyata. Vimukha chetasa means for those people, everyone, or materialists who've turned their face away from you, they've forgotten you. Vimukha chetasa literally means turn. Indriyata, for the sake of the indriyas, the senses, sense gratification. To enjoy a little maya sukhaya, illusory, fleeting happiness of the senses. Bodhamudvahato, I mean they're bearing the great burden of this enterprise to try to enjoy the senses. Have to make so much money and everything that, Vimudhan, so foolish rascals. So I'm here to try to give them you. He's talking to Lord Nrsingadev. I don't see anyone else but you who can save them. In the next verse he goes on with his mood. So that's the mood of preaching, and it helps if one embraces austerity. I have this one verse. I'll give you one. Oh boy, it's getting late. He says, this was taught to me by Mahavishnu Maharaj, the elder. And he says, he taught me, Dehesti mangsurudide bimatam chajasra, jaya sutari chasadama matam vamuncha, pushyani sham jagadidham chanabungatishtam, vairagya raga rasikho bhavabhakti nishtam. Don't love the body, just a bag of flesh and blood and bone. Give up your sense of ownership for all you think you own. At every moment, see that your world totters on destruction. Become detached and learn to love the Lord without obstruction. Now, I didn't do justice to that last line. He says, Vairagya raga. Vairagya raga rasiko bhava bhakti nishtam. So Vairagya raga means become really attached to detachment. You understand? Embrace it is a metaphor, embrace the goddess of detachment, dispassion. Not exactly renunciation. That's also there. We renounce things completely. That tyag. It's explained in the 18th chapter, tyaga. But we're much more concerned with being detached internally. Because how can you be apart from those things in a world like this? You're going to live in a city like San Diego. You're going to see and be associated with these things. You can't stop, perceiving them. But if you're detached, then they can't get to you. The danger is that you're full of all these attachments, and so you have to go far away. Go to the Himalayas or something. Okay. But if you can become internally renounced, detached, then you can move amongst where the people are, and you can give them Krishna consciousness. That's what Prabhupada did. So that's the real mood that we have. Sorry,
yes,
kind of a long
Dravida
answer.
Prabhu,
Okay.
Monumental answer to my question. Thank you very much.
This is a new one. I have never
You're
given
amazing,
a monumental
Prabhu.
answer
Thank
before.
You very much.
You're welcome, Prabhu. Haribol, Haribol.
Haribol.
Okay, so all right, we'll resume tomorrow with this purport. Is that okay? because I wanted to announce also, I guess we have the same people here, but I have 3 books. They're about 10 pounds a piece, so I'm carrying 30 pounds. So you already got yours, all right, but you didn't get yours, so you can take your pick after the kirtan. Okay, all right. So we have 2 minutes, so I'll share a couple of more shlokas with you. Monumental shlokas. Manasijapani jushte, labdapatos dushte, timanagahana rupe, hanta sangsara kupe. 10 we quit and then we just get ready. 10 after. Is that okay? Manasijapani jushte, labdapatos dushte, timanagahana rupe, hanta sangsara kupe, ajitanakala raksha heta mundara daksham, upanaya mamahaste bhakti rajum namaste. This is what Rupa Goswami was writing after we retired and took sannyas. This is one of the many, many shlokas to teach us. Fallen in this deep and dark and dirty well of Maya, threatened by the snake of lust whose venom burns like fire. Helplessly I pray, O Lord, whose strength is ne'er in doubt. Place the rope of bhakti in my hands and pull me out. So what do we have to do? Just hold on to that rope. That means follow strictly and accept the austerities of Krishna consciousness, knowing that the end of the line is the eternal life of bliss and knowledge. And one more sweet one. It's always good to end with a sweet one. Maduram, Maduram, Vabadasya Vibho, Maduram, Maduram, Vadanam, Maduram, Madugandi Madus, Mitame Tadaho, Maduram, 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 Maduram. Sweet, sweet is my dear Lord's form. Sweet is still his face, so fair. But his honey-scented, gentle smile is sweet beyond compare. So you can remember that verse as we see the beautiful face, form and face and smile of Giridhari right next to Radharani. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. We'll resume and 6:18 tomorrow. Yeah, we did that. Charity. Charities for the householders. Right? Hare Krishna.